All right, U.S. moves soldiers to Alaska Island amid Russian military activity increase in the area. This is just about less than 48 hours after we heard that there was an unusual kind of amount of not only a submarine, a tugboat, a military boat, and I believe an aircraft as well in that same 24-hour period up by Alaska. Now, they then reported, which I questioned if they were actually telling the full story, that this Russian submarine was there and they were actually in our economic zone, but they were doing it under a law or kind of an order that international law says that if there is ice, you can go up to 30 miles out of the way or into somebody's zone if it's like avoiding ice or something. That's at least what I remember from that. But now they, of course, say that the U.S. military has moved about 130 soldiers along with mobile rocket launchers to a desolate island in the Aleutian chain of western Alaska amid a recent increase in the Russian military planes and vessels approaching American territory. Again, they're saying mobile rocket launchers. So they're not only putting 130 people up there. That doesn't seem like a big troop number. They're putting gear and launchers. So that is something to heavily pay attention to. Of course, 8 Russian military planes and 4 Navy vessels, including 2 submarines, have actually come into this area in just the past week. And of course, Russia and China conducted joint military drills in this same time period. So we have this going on. A direct quote from this was, "It's not the first time that we've seen the Russians and the Chinese flying, in the vicinity, and that's something that we're obviously going to closely monitor. And it's also something that we're prepared to respond to." Pentagon spokesperson Major General Pat Ryder. As part of a, quote, force projection operation, the Army September 12th sent the soldiers to Shemya Island, some 1,200 miles southwest of Anchorage, where the U.S. Air Force maintains an air station that dates back to World War II. The soldiers brought 2 high-mobility artillery rocket systems, or HIMARS, with them. So we actually covered back when that happened. Now you have even more up there, especially after speaking, I think it was last Tuesday, we had active duty military Marfoogle members essentially saying that they saw a lot of different people coming through. It wasn't Anchorage. It was another place in Alaska. I'm trying to remember. It might have been Nome, but they said that there was at least 6 or 7 military guys that were on their way somewhere, and he said it was really strange because of how they talked and how they didn't talk when people are around. But again, so now to add on to that, we have this. So we're going to cover this and much, much more. In fact, we have China, we have North Korea, we have everything that is going on in the world in just a moment. So stick around. We'll be right back right after this. Nothing in this show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough. Bring it back, love. Our U.S. troops deploying to Alaska. Hey, bring it back, love. Everybody better keep their head up. All right, remember you can find a full bibliography of every single article, tweet, video, picture, document over on our website. All you have to do is look for today's thumbnail. When you find this, U.S. troops deploying to Alaska, Urgent update deployments to Alaska. You will be able to find a full source list for every article, tweet, video, picture, document that we showed you here today. Now, we don't only just put this together, we're actually pointing out the flaws in what the MSM is saying. And now, again, a lot of the things that are being said is, everything is going to be okay, especially since we're less than 2 months from our Pick the Prez Day. They're trying to tell us everything is fine. These aren't issues. This isn't happening, and you're not broke. Most of us kind of see right through that, especially when they say, inflation's not a problem anymore. It's the best it's been. Since when? Last week? Because honestly, it's getting pretty bad. And most people, are paying attention right now politically. Most people by now have a pretty strong opinion. We're not trying to get, into all of that. But I will say this. Some people don't care about all that. They just want, obviously, the world to be okay. And I think that that's where we should all be seeing eye to eye. Let's bring in my co-host / internet brother, Dex James. What is going on, and how are you doing today?
Well, hello, Adam, and hello, Foucault fam. I'm doing just fine.
So let's go over. First of all, we have troops going to Alaska. Now, other Foucault family members have talked about this in the last couple weeks. There has been a lot of boys, our men and women, that are leaving, right? Boys and gals that are basically deploying, and many assume that they're going to the Middle East or Europe. Most of them are. So it is surprising to see that we are deploying some up to Alaska. Now, if you are from Alaska, let us know. Tell us if you've seen anything crazy. I do know we've got a good chunk of people in Alaska because obviously we're friends with Alaska Prepper and others, and we've gotten a bunch of his crowd, which obviously when you do a channel and people know where you're from, a lot of people usually, they're like, hey, that guy's from where I'm from. So I've got a lot of Washingtonians here. He's got a lot of Alaskans. So through that, we've actually gotten a lot of folks from Alaska. Most of them have said, not only in the last week, but in the last year, that they have been shipping very strange, huge packages, covered objects through convoys. And then in some areas of Alaska, because it is so complicated to get stuff to certain places, they're bringing in things, Chinook helicopters over passes that can't be drived. So, what are they truly loading up there? I don't know if we'll know until, something really happens. Dex, what do you think about the whole shipping rocket launchers and mobile rocket launchers up there and everything else?
It's a strategic area. It's one of the probably most critical areas for us from a strategic deterrence, strategic launch, or anything that goes down nuclear. We've seen the uptick, and I think that is probably the reason why we're seeing troops deployed there, in addition to the fact that we're getting prepared. If you don't see the writing on the wall that something's coming, and it's not just going to be there, it's going to be in, on our coastlines, it's going to be everywhere. If war breaks out with NATO and Russia, which is very, very likely, and we're on the brink of it, it feels like, for the first time, we're going to have to be defending our homeland. And Alaska is very important, but we got a lot of other coastline to deal with too. And I think that's something we will probably start to see some changes happening in the not too distant future on that.
So let us know. I know, we've also covered a bunch of, odd stories from Alaska as well. Obviously, you've had some pretty big earthquakes up by there. You also had kind of your main internet line. I remember we covered a story about how most of the internet is like 1 or 2 lines that goes through the whole thing, and then some places in Alaska still don't even have internet. But there was a threat to the main communications there, as there's threats to communications between the U.S. and Europe with their underwater cables. So that I don't know. I think Alaska is, one of those places where things could definitely get crazy, especially being that it is so close to Russia. This is Russia right here. And if you look at the very points of this, we've actually covered other stories where they show some of these little islands, or I can't remember which one, but they have Russians living there. So, I mean, it's like Alaska, Russia, Alaska, Russia. It's right there. So kind of crazy that we are that close by land. And, obviously it's not an easy hike to go from there down into America, but dang. And then let's see here. We've got our next story. Ukrainian drone attack triggers earthquake-sized blast at the arsenal in Russia's Tver region. Now, they're saying this was a drone. If you remember, it was initially called a possible long-range missile attack. But right when that happened, people started freaking out yesterday, and for good reason. If they were saying that that was one of the first long-range missile attacks, then that would be a big deal. Now they're saying that it was a drone. From the videos and things, and who knows which one of those actually ended up being verified, there was some huge explosions. Dex, do you want to go over what happened here?
Yeah.
And by the way, the explosions, can they do that with a smaller drone or?
Well, so that's the thing. When it happened, the immediate assumption was it was one of the larger missiles, and that would have meant that the actions of Ukraine were using Western technology to reach deep into Russia, which would require a response. That's what everybody was expecting, just given the magnitude, because the early late night images, it was a huge fireball just outside of Moscow. It was very big. But the thing is, it hit literally hit a depot or a cache of large amount of weaponry. And obviously, I think that the ammunition depot itself is probably what added to the magnitude of the explosion. So if this really was the drones, like, again, those drones don't pack as much of a punch. We've seen some of them, blacken the side of a building, but again, if it hits something that's highly, explosive, like an ammunition depot that's full of a lot of other things in addition to the ammo, yeah, then we could see that massive fireball. And in this case, it even registered on the Richter scale. But look, this event itself, it's important if it was one of the missiles, and it's still important that it's, even though it's not. The red lines have been crossed so many times. Like, at some point, he has to respond. It's, you can only poke the bear so many times before he finally gets up and swings, the claw at you. It's not like you can get away with this forever. So every time this happens, it's just one step closer. And, it's nice to think that he's holding back on peace, for peace against NATO, but I really don't think that's the case. I think they're strategically planning to do something. If not, it's orchestrated by everyone. And we are on the cusp. I mean, as soon as one of those UK missiles, the Storm Shadows, as soon as a Storm Shadow goes midway into Russia, his country can't let him not respond. I mean, they're going to be like, what are you doing as a president,
Well, Dex, can we find, was it not in Russia the other day too, there was an unusual spike in radiation? Did we ever find, I don't think we did an update to that. Now they're, with this, they say NASA found that NASA satellites picked up an intense heat source emanating from an area about 5 square miles at the site of early hours, and earthquake monitoring stations picked up what the sensors thought was a small earthquake in the area. The enemy hit an ammunition depot in the area of Toropets. Everything that can burn is already burning there and exploding, was one of the quotes there. So, what actually happened here, and are we being told everything? First of all, like Dex said, it's like, at some point they're going to strike back, or they're going to finally swing the paw. It's almost like they want them to. Maybe on their end, they're like, well, they're trying to get us into a war. I know that people see this both ways. We try to, go devil's advocate and look at this from both sides. But honestly, when, you go back to the fundamentals of kind of our community and what most of us believe is that there is a bigger picture at hand here. It's not just about beating Russia, and it's not about this or that. There's really a bigger goal at hand. They want more of the world to be under one. And what's crazy is I think China does want that. So when you think of that in the terms like, oh, we're this, these alliances versus those alliances, well, both of these alliances, the Western nations and China, Russia, Iran, and all of these, they are all willing to go up to this top pyramid, and they're all willing to kind of work with the W and the E and the F. So it makes you wonder about these wars and everything else. Obviously, who profits from a war? Well, the people that are invested in Northrop Grumman, Boeing, Raytheon, General Dynamics, and of course, I always forget at least one. But those companies are the ones that really profit. They are making all of the weapons. They're the manufacturers. Then that money, of course, goes to the board. The board of those companies, obviously, they're invested in the company. And the names on that list should not have so many politicians. Do you guys agree? I do. So at the end of the day, most of us think that, they're not going to go to war and have millions and millions of people perish just so they can get rich. Think again. We're talking about people that really, really not only don't care about us, but rather not have us around at all. I mean, these are people that are disgusted by how we live, and meaning how we live like normal people. They even their servants and the people that they have go personal shopping for them, those people are millionaires. They don't even want to get anywhere close next to poor people. What's so crazy is this is the same group that's pushing all the equality stuff and everything else. But at the same point, they are the first ones, I guarantee you, to be like, oh, gosh, ooh, what does that guy do? He's construction, or he does this. It's like they're literally disgusted by poor people. It's like a caste. And I'm not talking about all super rich people, but the majority I've met that are anywhere above in the millions and millions, because now millionaire is not even a thing. I mean, it's not a big deal. But like we're talking about these multi-millionaires, they're not even the top people. It's the billionaires. These billionaires are absolutely insane. When you have so much money that you can literally do anything, go anywhere, those are the people that get into some weird stuff. I think it's a symptom of just having everything you want, and it's not in human nature to have anything and everything you want. It's not right. I don't think God wants us to have, that much money. But either way, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. And then the devices explode again in Lebanon, raising fears of wider Israel conflict. Dex, do you want to go over it? It happened again, but in a different way.
So handheld radios used by the group detonated Wednesday. So now, the day before it was the pagers, and now it's the handheld radios. So they said 20 more people were taken out, and more than 450 were injured across the area. And the Tuesday's toll had risen to 12 perishing and 3,000 injured. So all in all, this infiltration has taken out, unfortunately, 32 people, and 3,450 were injured. That's pretty significant. And you got to think about it from a tactical point of view, from a surprise point of view. This is pretty significant when you think about how they pulled this off, and the fact that it worked, and the fact that they booby trap something like this. It's one that you'll read in the history books later, and people will be in awe over. I would assume, outside of the hurt and death of and especially innocent people on it. I set that aside. I understand that's a bad thing, and I'm not trying to make light of it at any means, but just in the throes of conflict, especially between these two groups, Israel and Hez, the tactics are all over the place, and they're going to be, because it's not conventional. It's not, let's just roll the tanks out and go a typical combat. It's very much a dynamic and fluid game of what they do to each other, and so this is a big one. And I think you're going to see a lot of rhetoric, but it'll more than likely turn into something as it relates to a retaliation from Hez over this, because this is a big blow to them.
It's going to be taught in military schools. If we have, a military in 100 years, this would be taught. There's probably going to be chunks of these things saved and put in a museum somewhere. No joke. There's probably going to be pagers in a museum in 100 years, and they're going to say, this was the first time that, they used pagers as a thing. And then there'll be a walkie-talkie next to it with a plaque that says this was part of it. One thing I am kind of surprised by is the handheld, walkies, which I'm assuming are bigger. They did more damage. 20 people perished because of them. And I would assume that there's less of those than the other ones, but maybe they have, everybody that has a pager has a radio. 20 people perished. And it makes me wonder, is it because of the size of the object? The pager was smaller explosive. The radio is bigger explosives. So what we talked about all yesterday was, what if, something like this could be done to cell phones? If the U.S. Gov or any Gov really had somebody they didn't like, everybody has one. It's like if they had some sort of frequency they could do to make a radio or whatever device essentially send a signal or overheat or something, or something with microwaves or something. You never know. They've been testing this kind of stuff like crazy. What if they have a satellite that can beam down and trigger something? That's not something too many people have been talking about, some satellite triggered thing. I know that people have talked about possible frequencies and things like that. We won't know the truth. Dex, go ahead.
Well, think about the psychological effect. It was one thing when pagers went off, right? That alone could have been, pretty scary for everybody around. But then when you see something else go off, now you start questioning everything around you. You start thinking what else could be booby-trapped and that you won't know about. And it's just sitting, waiting. And it seems like they all go down at once. And is there more? And if you live, and you got to understand, there's civilians there too. But if you got to live around that, imagine what you're thinking right now, and especially just seeing the amount of people that got hurt, and especially the damage to their head and face, because a lot of the walkies are going to be up by their mouth and talking, or the pager, they're looking at the small print trying to read it, and it goes kaboom. Yeah, and they survived. That's a lot of horrific looking scenes that are happening around there by over 3,500 people. That's a lot of people. So again, the rest of the people, whether they are part of that group or maybe thinking of becoming part of that group, this is one of those things that's going to stain the back of their mind, whether it's the moment right now and what other devices are around them that they may be scared of, or what they want to do because they don't like what happened in their country. Right?
These are going to be some jumpy mofos, okay? I mean, could you imagine your alarm goes off and the guy jumps out of bed? Like, there is a pretty funny clip that's been obviously trending since this all happened, and it's of a Family Guy clip, and he's like, oh, that's almost as bad when I, bought a Palestinian alarm clock, and then it flashed back to it hitting 7 o'clock, and then instead of a buzzing noise, it goes, Allahu Akbar, and then psh, blows up. It's not funny, but at the same time, it's like, this is insane. What is happening right now? I mean, just the absurdity of what is actually going on. The new tech warfare. This isn't, tanks. This isn't people marching in lines. It's these super, super guerrilla tactics and weird high-tech guerrilla tactics. I guess.
Is this what you had in mind for a cyber attack? I mean, this is crazy. This is, I don't know if anybody thought of this one.
What other devices, are they going to be afraid when their toaster pops? I guess we'll see. And then before we move on, make sure to go over and check out EMP Shield. If you have actually done some of your research as far as electromagnetic pulse attacks, one thing that people are thinking about is an attack that would hit our entire country. Almost all of our adversaries have actually threatened an EMP or an EMP blast against us. But now there have been memos that have been going out about actual non-nuclear EMP devices. And this is something that our military group has talked about. A non-nuclear EMP is something that could actually fit into a backpack. It would have a smaller radius. They gave an example of like a 5-mile radius. So it could knock out a city. That is something that now even law enforcement in our Marfoogle fam said that they are now keeping an eye out for. So if you do want to protect your vehicles, your trucks, your motorcycles, your boats, pretty much anything that runs, including your generators, very important that you have backup power after any other power goes out. Say the power doesn't come back on. That's why you have generators. That's why you have solar generators. That's why you have gas generators. Again, the EMP shield is wired in very easily, especially to the car. It takes 10 minutes. You don't have to be a mechanic. You don't even have to be able to do an IKEA furniture. It is red to red on your battery, black to black on your battery, green to ground or a part of your chassis, so it grounds the signal, and then you bolt it into the chassis or the side of the engine area, and then boom, you're done. It takes less than 10 minutes, and then your car is protected. Now, if you have a classic car that's 40 years old and doesn't need it because nothing is digital in it, great. But most people have newer cars, and newer cars will not do almost anything without a chip. Average car has about 160 semiconductor chips inside of it, all of which will be fried in the event of an EMP or a non-nuclear EMP device. So the great part too, it also protects against a Carrington level event from the sun. Wages just went live right before us, which thank you, Wages. I saw a couple people say you sent people our way. Thank you very much. Go check out Wages for more information about the solar activity. It has been going up and up and up and up. And we've had so many crazy events. I really hope that people take our suggestion, even if you don't go through us. If you do go through us, it does help us, and you get a $50 off discount. But again, that would help us greatly because we are independent. We're completely on our own. We do this show, including all of the links, the bibliography, everything is done for every single show. So if you want to support us, share us out to somebody you don't know, give us a like, hit a subscribe button, or if you want to get yourself protected, do something like this. marfooglenews.com/EMP, and make sure to use the code MARF. All right, and then panic as 2 solar panel systems explode amidst pager walkie-talkie blasts in Beirut targeting Hezbollah. I guess there's one more thing to be worried about. Dex, go on about this.
Yeah, so they're not sure if this is actually part of it, and they're kind of saying it may not be, but it goes back to the point I was making earlier. Like, they had 2 different solar panel platforms or whatever on, I'm assuming on buildings or something, that just exploded. And these were in areas that would have been targeting, Hez specifically. So that added to like the panic, like what's happening? What else do they have? And maybe those 2 went off prematurely, and that's the next one that's tomorrow. Who knows? Right? That's the question. Like, what else is there? And then, guys, let's, this is all about Israel and Hamas, but Hezbollah. Sorry, set that aside. Imagine where this goes from here. Imagine other countries, and I think Don Wells said it nice. China could do the same thing with any of our appliances, cars, phones, televisions, stereos, radios, everything that comes in from China could be used as a weapon against us. Don Wells in chat. Great comment. But think about that as we think about how conflict evolves. What if our adversaries start to take this type of tactic and they have difficult to detect explosive capabilities that could be miniaturized, that may already be miniaturized, that could be easy to replicate and put into devices and put them out there and have them basically sitting, waiting. It's like the equivalent of those bugs that are sitting, waiting to open backdoors into networks. These are booby traps sitting, waiting to go off anywhere in the world. And with everything being connected, and everything, relying on components, especially from adversarial countries like that could be a challenge to us. That's a threat. And I think we have to think about that for the future.
So I was right there with you. I was there before the comment, and it was probably the person commenting probably thought the same thing. It was something that was said in that. It just made me think about this, or maybe it was this picture. But I was thinking about these guys all holding their cell phones. Do you really not think? So if you take a picture from 1998 of New York, people walking, thousands and thousands of people walking, they used to be business drones with their suitcases. Now you take a picture of New York in 2024, you have 100,000 people walking down the street, and every one of them is looking at their phone. You don't think that they are trying to weaponize these things that are handheld? Look at these three guys. If you were able to trigger these to go off in somebody's face, how would you take out three big guys like this, right? You wouldn't need to do anything. You just need a device, something that would be able to take them out right there, something that they're already holding, something that may, I don't know, have an ability to communicate, something that you could communicate to, send a signal to, and that's something that would have something already inside of it that could actually explode. We're talking about cell phones. I mean, it's crazy.
And it doesn't have to be that powerful, Adam. Just a small enough one to throw shards into your eyes could debilitate you to where you're useless as a potential, soldier, right? Exactly. It doesn't take that much. They don't have to completely wipe people, out. They just have to maim.
Yeah, make them less of a soldier. And then Armenia uncovers alleged coup plot with Russian traces. We'll talk about that here in a second. Swetnam Ministries says, hate to say it, but judgment is coming soon to America. It says, we have fallen far from God. They won't wait for the leader day. Florida has had an increase in cell and net disruptions. Swetnam, again, I've been pointing it out for the last 2 weeks. Since I did that show about how we lost internet and cell phones for almost 24 hours, I mean, we're talking about cell phone service, SOS on every phone. Very, very freaky here in Washington, near Seattle, because of optics. Fiber optics were somehow damaged. And apparently it doesn't matter that your cell phone's wireless. It goes to a tower, which goes to a wire that goes to another tower. So it's just really freaky to see. And then, again, good point. Yeah, they won't wait until pick the leader day. Johnny says, Marf, were you aware that the U.S. military is recommissioning 2 defunct remote Pacific Island runways built for World War II as we speak for training and operations? That is scary crap. Yes, actually, we covered even at the inception of it. So one thing that is crazy is, so say something is breaking now, somebody will say, why aren't you covering this or that? And I'm not saying you're saying that, but they'll say, why aren't you covering this? Most often it is because we catch it even at the inception, the idea of it, or the very first whiff of it. The Fugel fam, you guys are the ones who get us a lot of these stories. We know about it, and we've already, shared it with our audience. So it does, sometimes we don't touch back on things, but you can always go to our website and search up in the search bar for things that we've already covered. As far as recommissioning those runways, when I covered it at first, I said, what do you think that is? They're getting prepared for a war. They moved the Iron Dome to Guam. What do you think that's there for? All of these things are huge signs. Why they spent these just ginormous amounts on amphibious drop vehicles, and not only that, they had it for 2032 was the contract was to be finished by 2032 or something. Those were finished, I believe, at the end of last year. We saw this amphibious contract get moved up and basically sped up like we've never seen. We are seeing contracts that we cover. So we cover, say it will be a DoD release or a Pentagon release where they're saying, we just ordered this company with a huge contract. We found them at this, tech conference, and we're going to be doing $1.7 million in these devices or whatever. We'll cover that. And then you will see the contract is for 2029. All of a sudden, in 2024, it's done. Why are so many contracts getting moved up like we don't have a tomorrow? I will tell you what I believe. I think that we are literally heading into a hot war, and both sides are preparing. And then Heath Spear, thank you. And then Scott Dixon in the very beginning of the show, thank you, says, it's time. I'm a little late, but I added echo for emphasis. All right, and then Armenia uncovers an alleged coup plot with Russian traces. Yerevan on September 18th accused 5 Armenian citizens and 2 former residents of Nagorno-Karabakh of undergoing military training in Russia in order to stage an armed coup in Armenia. 3 suspects have been arrested, while 4 are still at large. The Armenian Investigative Committee said of course, identity of the suspects was not revealed. While the committee did not implicate Russian authorities in the alleged plot, the news comes amid already strained Moscow-Yerevan ties. The suspects were offered a 3-month military training on Russian territory for a monthly payment of 220,000 rubles, or about $2,400. It's like when you see 220,000, $2,400 they were paying him $2,400 for a coup plot. It's pretty crazy. The plans were carried out in cooperation with other persons whose identity is yet to be determined, according to the statement. The alleged plotters were acquaint themselves with, quote, new heavy weapons and learn the skills of their use. As part of their training, the committee said, the suspects then recruited other persons, fellow Armenians, and Nagorno-Karabakh former residents to join the alleged plot and also undergo training in Russia, according to the statement. So what do you guys think that this is some sort of setup for? Is this got some weirdness behind it? I was trying to see the angle. I'm not super familiar with Armenia. Where does Armenia fit into all of this? We do know, if you actually go to the map, Azerbaijan, of course, this is nearby, of course, Georgia. You have this whole area, Georgia. There's lots of talk about Georgia-Russia relations. There's also talk of even, up above, the Mongolia relations and the, what was the other one? Tajikistan and what was the other one? Kazakhstan. There's all these different kind of interwoven stories of what is happening between Russia and these other countries that are not only, on every which side of Ukraine, that they're somehow involved, or they're asking for NATO's help because they believe that Russia's going to come to get them next, or they want to join Russia, or, there's all of these, interconnected kind of alliances. Armenia, I don't know about this one. So fill me in, guys. Dex, do you know anything more than I do about, what's the whole thing with this? Is this weird?
It's all about sides. It's all about taking the sides. And they've had, increasingly pro-Western policy there. And the ties with Moscow were straining. And I think it's just a matter of whether it's in Azerbaijan or, Turkmenistan or any of these countries in that area. They're either, a lot of them are left over from the days of the Soviet Union, where they were either allied with them, or they were part of the Union. But it's the shift of some of these that are moving towards the West, and that throws off the balance there. And this is an area that's right in between Iran and Russia. It's right in between, Syria and Turkey and Russia. And there's a lot of, it's a critical point that doesn't have a lot of money and doesn't have a lot of, and Georgia's there. That's the other one that's been talked about a lot, about whether or not they're going to want to join NATO, be better partners with NATO, or if they're going to be better aligned with Russia. And I think it's all about which side are they taking. And we and they are all pulling for them, each of them, to move in the opposite directions.
Yeah. And somebody made a comment that I should follow earthquakes by the Cascadia subduction zone. I do. As far as some of the 2.0s, the 3.0s that have happened recently, if there's something like right now, I turn off my notifications, but I do watch. That's something that directly affects me. So I don't always cover some of the smaller ones, but if it does fall exactly on that line or at some of the break points, those are ones that we've done plenty of videos. I warn people. I warn the West Coast especially because those earthquakes can really, really, be a signal that, it's at least time to remember that you should have a plan by now. If you're on the West Coast and you don't have a plan, then I think that's pretty slow because, and no offense to anybody that doesn't, but if you're on the direct West Coast, if you have waterfront property and you don't have a plan, then I think you're crazy. Because that Cascadia subduction zone we've had so many stories of it not only being more active, but they're finding out more and more about there's holes with oxygen coming through, bubbles breaking through, so many different stories about different movements. They believe that a chunk of it is just stuck. There's no movement. And if there's no movement, there's no release. Up at Washington, man, Washington is going to be just absolutely wiped out. You've got whole cities that are out that have a 45-minute drive to get out of the city and only 15 minutes to get away from the tsunami with not one evacuation tower. I mean, it's just nuts. And I don't think they're making evacuation towers in some of those places near Ocean Shores and Westport. I don't think they're making them because they would have to make them 150 feet tall in those areas because of the jetty. And that would look pretty absurd. If you've ever been to Ocean Shores, imagine a 150-foot structure just for people. I bet it would probably even scare tourists. That's probably why they've probably voted it down or something. I don't know. I don't know what's going down with local politicians there, but they're all going to die. And that's really, really messed up. If you do live in Ocean Shores, you should be, writing your local politicians and asking them why. All right, and then let's see here. Let's go back over to the map, and we have panic over new GPT that reasons as expert warns of Terror AI raids that steal cash from huge numbers of victims. Dex, what is the new ChatGPT doing?
Okay, so they showed off a new version of ChatGPT that they say was capable of thinking and reasoning. And they developed a new series of AI models designed to spend more time thinking before they respond. They can reason through complex tasks and solve harder problems as previous models in science, coding, and math. So that sounds good. Yeah, better science, better coding, better math. Okay, fine. But the problem is when you layer in, how does that same capability get applied to what the criminals do? And, the top security experts were talking about these new advancements and how they're being exploited to create new waves of scams against, individuals and, create, whether it's just an email that is easier and better to understand than the one that has all the typos in it that for some reason you thought was from your bank that should have been easy for you to identify as a fake email, to now looking even better, or going so far as to actually having a conversation with you and using thinking and reasoning to better that conversation and drive you down a path that scammer may want. Now, of course, we'd like to think that OpenAI's individual product will, prevent or detect that type of thing happening and shut that down. And they have, in the case of other examples where things like their AI platforms were used to create content that was being, specifically used in conflict and misinformation campaigns, things like that. They've gone after. So I would assume they would go after this too, but that's not the point. The point is the technology is there. And just like we spoke, 4 or 5 days ago on one of our shows, we were talking about how they were using AI to reprogram you. They didn't use those words, reprogram. I'm using those words, reprogram. But they were able to take an AI algorithm and have it talk to you in a way about a theory, a conspiracy theory that you might hold, but use, its ability to reason you out of your belief into the normal belief that they would want you to have. And they were successful. They had a higher rate of converting people away from the strong beliefs that they may have about theories like JFK or whatever else.
And it would feed you articles. It would be able to grab certain facts and certain things. It's basically like a professional debate club, like somebody who is, you're about to catch me, a master at the great debate. But it would be like that, where it would take essentially anything and everything that would help it achieve winning that argument against these theories. And a lot of these theories, as many of us see them, our perspective is that they're not theories at all, is that they are the truth. And the truth, of course, is no longer really trustable right now, especially with, they will say, the sky is red, and they're like, nope, it's fact checked. They said it was red. So now people are like, oh yeah, the sky's red. Yeah, totally. At one time of the day, maybe. I guess a broken clock is right at least twice a day, right? So with this, it's like, this is scary stuff. And reasoning, just keep in mind that the current ChatGPT, the GPT that you have probably tested or, played around with, if you ask it, like, there's a train going 60 miles an hour, this person has 3 buckets, and, this train flies off a cliff, and who does it hit, this guy or that guy? It can't do those kinds of problems. It can't do these different reasoning kind of issues. And it's stupid at some things, like especially when you actually look at it, how it makes, how these things are doing prompts. Like you can ask an AI to, what prompt would I use to replicate a picture? It has these weird gaps, especially now a lot of these ChatGPTs, you can ask it to do a picture. Well, when you type in something, then it communicates to it, and you see the gap where it's rewriting your prompt into its own prompt, how it thinks that you want it. And it's like there's all these odd gaps. That's one thing I have noticed. And of course, there's been errors. I've been pointing out, we have had mainstream media, big publishers like, New York Post, the New York Times, CNN, obviously, CNET, and all sorts of other major publications that have had the worst errors in their articles. And that is because I believe they are straight up using AI. Not to mention, we just showed you the Time magazine cover of September 30th, but it came out, I believe, on... Yeah, it was supposed to be the September 30th thing, but it came out on the 14th, I believe, or something like that. They released the photo. 11th. Now, by the way, I guess they were releasing the image before they released the magazine. Is that correct?
Yeah, they do that. They usually publish it on social media and before it comes out in print.
So, and by the way, this image was our former president on a golf cart looking backwards, and it says "in trouble." And obviously, a lot of people looked at that and said, "What the hell?" 4 days after they released it, there was an attempt on his life, and apparently he was. Did you know he was on his golf cart, or he was just getting off of it? So I thought that was nuts. But as far as that attempt on his life, they put that out. My point is, they ended up using AI, like straight up shameless AI. The letters on his hat were all AI. The AI doesn't do letters and words great. So this could be a game changer. Why would a big company like that's trying to save on their bottom line even hire an artist, hire a writer, hire any of these people when you've got basically the best qualified person to do the job, only it's a ChatGPT? Think about the resume of a ChatGPT worker. It would be like having the smartest person in the world who has the best retention of anything they've ever learned in the entire world, and they can do pretty much anything on a digital platform. They can do math, they can do graphs, they can do anything, and they can do it at the drop of a dime. Where do humans fit into all of this? I don't think people are as terrified as they should be, because that means that this whole world is about to change. I mean, it is changing, but we're talking about what are we going to do for work very soon here. If you're in a job that does any kind of thing on a computer, I hope that you are planning ahead. And then Satellite photos show U.S. reclaiming World War II airfield for China war. So wanted to go over this. And again, we've actually covered this. We've covered the inception, the ideas of doing this. And this is something that we've mentioned at least twice before. These two places, the remote island of Tinian, which is less than 40 square miles, is one of three principal islands in the Northern Mariana Islands, a string of sparsely populated islets in the western Pacific Ocean that makes up the U.S.'s westernmost frontier, along with the major military hub of Guam, some 100 miles to the south. Now remember, they put the Iron Dome on Guam. Why do you think that they're bringing these in here? Tinian was known for its strategic value during the war due to its proximity to Tokyo. You see how this is all starting to fit together? Of course, Japan is now our ally, so this is going to come into place. It's going to come into play in a different way. Less than 1,500 miles, and of course, it became a staging base to launch bomber attacks on mainland Japan. The island is similar distance to China and other flashpoints in Asia, with the U.S. Defense Department plan costed nearly $500 million, now preparing it to help the United States deter or defeat the Chinese military. After the Allies captured Tinian in 1944, the Navy immediately began constructing what was then the world's largest airbase, building over existing airstrips for smaller Japanese fighter planes. The North Field alone had 4 8,500-foot runways and hard stands that supported up to 265 B-29 Superfortress bombers. In August of 1945, North Field launched 2 bombers that carried out the first and only wartime use of nuclear weapons in human history, the dropping of atomic bombs Little Boy and Fat Man on Japan, effectively ending the war and spared American troops from a bloody and costly invasion of the Japanese mainland to force the empire's surrender. So it is a big deal that these things are getting completely revamped and re-owned. When they suggested this, when they made the idea of it, when they said, hey, we should do this because there's a coming war, and where you had suggestions, different representatives talking about like, hey, we don't have the capabilities we even had in World War II. Well, the first response to that was, well, how do we get the capabilities that we have in World War II? You are looking at the solution. They are reopening the exact areas that we used in World War II for the next war. It's going to be day after day of most of us in the community telling the rest of the people this is going to happen. Every sign that could possibly be put up is being hammered on a big wall with a bunch of advertising posters, and it's like 10,000 things get posted over it. And very little, under 50 million posters for bands and concerts and everything else, a little sign that says war is coming, and people don't see it. I know all of you guys do, and even if you disagree and you're still here, you probably know that it definitely looks like it is growing to the point where we're at the point of no return. How does this go back to normal? How does everything undo itself? The alliances that are being made are now entrenched. You've got Russia, Iran, North Korea, China, Venezuela, Cuba, even places like South Africa. We don't know what they're truly doing with Russia and others, but these guys are getting in this alliance. And who knows? Where's Armenia going? Where's obviously you've got Belarus and others that we might have some turn. India might actually turn last minute and be our enemy. They're part of BRICS. They're part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So yeah. Dex, as far as these islands and the runways that are being reopened, I think this is a clear sign that they are preparing for an actual war, not for just training.
It's not a vacation destination, that's for sure. It was critical in World War II. It's going to be critical in the next one. And you need to have them open now if you plan to use them now. And that's what we need to be paying attention to. This is yet one of the many, many signs that we in dots that you guys have brought forward, that we have looked at and we found. And all you have to do is connect them all, and you can see the bigger picture. It's coming.
Now, this is July 16th, 2023, right? You can see grass has grown over. You want to see something scary? That's this year. 1 year later. Less than a year. No, 13 months later. It is all cleaned up. So that should be an eye-opener to many people. And these are airfields that can take the biggest, C-130s. Many of them. Before we move on, make sure to go check out Jace. If you have a regular medication that you take every day, or if you're a caregiver for somebody that does, this is our recommendation as far as if you don't have either backup medication like antibiotics, or if you want to get yourself a huge amount, a year supply of backup medication for your own medication, then of course go over and check this out at Jace. It's a telehealth appointment with a board-certified doctor. It takes a few minutes, and then you can get yourself either a Jace case or the Jace Daily Plan, which is a year supply of your regular medications. Now, I'm sure they don't do every medication, but they do a ton of them. So I would highly recommend going and checking it out. As far as the antibiotics, they have that Jace case. It's extremely handy because if there is a day in the near future, whether it be from a natural disaster, some event, or some accident, say they do another update and they push it out early and they didn't test it on anything, and it all of a sudden knocks down the hospitals and pharmacies for 3 months at a time, then yeah, it's definitely a good thing to have antibiotics. And if you also look at some of the things that are going on with China right now, if you haven't noticed, energy is actually, they are putting everything on pause, and they're going to be opening up, they're going to be working with not only the DoD energy, the solar generators that we normally has an affiliate. Right now, they're on pause. I won't say too much more about that, but they are switching to American-made everything, which is a huge deal because most of the solar is made in China. It's one of the things that's almost nearly a monopoly. It's like there's certain things that you have to get from China. Antibiotics is one of them. It should tell people that if there are huge things going on and people are literally moving, things like solar out of China and completely cutting it off to the point where they're, basically pausing their entire structure for a minute, that should tell people something. As far as antibiotics, they say it's like something like 93 or 95%. I believe it's 93% of all antibiotics are made in China. 97% of all of the active pharmaceutical ingredients of it are made in China. So that the APIs, is that not insane? Most people should think so. So go get yourself a Jace case, because a tiny cut on your finger could be a funeral if you don't have modern medicine. And to have a backup of that, of all the most common ones, is incredible. Marfooglenews.com/Jace to learn more, and make sure to use the code MARF. It saves you money, and it helps our small channel at the same time. Dex, let's...
Hey, real quick, I just want to remind everybody that is on hold waiting for an energy. They're still working on you guys. They're just pausing new people because they're focusing on this shift. And and focusing on getting everybody else that's in queue, getting them their systems ASAP. Yeah,
they're still, if you already have one in process, then you're getting it. But that's literally something that right now, if you go there, you cannot order new units. So again, that's a huge deal. And they're working with the DoD to, in that partnership we shared you, that basically they're going to be starting to do other processes. They're going to try to get these new things going. And that is because of all of this huge shift that is going on with the world. So it is a big deal. All right, and then, of course, we have Japan says Chinese carrier entered its contiguous. Is it contiguous, Dex, or is it contiguous?
I think it's the former.
Contiguous?
Yeah.
Contiguous waters for the first time. I shared most of my opinion. Do you want to give yours real quick?
Well, look, there's two sides to this. One, we just covered the fact that we're rebuilding these bases down in this area. They're near Japan. They're getting ready for war with China. China is now turning around and driving their ships right up to the front door of Japan, basically, and saying, hey, we're here. We're not scared of you. And that's, a normalization and a reactionary thing that they've done to Taiwan over and over again. So as the war drum beats, more and more closer to the day of kinetic activity, you're going to see this type of testing from China over and over again with Japan, just like they did with Taiwan. It's not that they did with Taiwan. They still do it to Taiwan. They cross the line. They act like they're coming in just to see them scramble and see how they respond. And, as they start to pull into Japanese waters that, China's going to sort of now contest, they're going to see how they react. And then they'll start doing it more and more, and they'll get closer and closer. So I think that's what we're up against. And I don't know that Japan's going to stand for it.
Yeah, somebody said Chinaristan, or what was that other one? Japanistan? That's a pretty good one. And then as far as the first, we've covered first after first. We talk about that in our video over on Marfoogle News. That is a short shareable video. It was under 15 minutes, or if not, I think it was just over 15 minutes long. So that is a short shareable video that you can share with your friends. If you're trying to share our stuff, if you're trying to bring them into the fam, then make sure to share our short videos with them. Obviously, not everybody is going to right off the bat love a hour to 2 hour show. So make sure to share those. Again, that would be appreciated. Now, Heath Spear, thank you so much. I appreciate the support again. Johnny, Robert Nelson, thank you, and thank you. It says backup account for Neil Nelson. Well, that is awesome. I'm glad that you have one. And then, again, thank you for the support. JS, thank you so much. Evan Bullock, coming from an 11B in Alaska with B4 and soon to be B6. Don't worry, we made an oath to the Constitution and will never back down from that. Trust. Well, I sure hope, if I understand that right, I would hope that many would. But again, they're doing a lot of changes in the military, so who knows? And who knows? You might get some new recruits here soon if they pass certain laws. And then Adam and Dex, James, your devotion, dedication, and hearts are appreciated. I love my Fugel family. Mods, you are amazing. You are all in my prayers. AK forever in my heart. Thank you for continuing to stop by and to show support and show love. Thank you again, AK forever in my heart. And then Parker Craft, thank you so much for the super chat as well. I appreciate that. JS, thank you for the super sticker. Appreciate it. And I'm glad to see a ton of new names here tonight. So, again, keep coming. You'll see tons of great information if you come every night, Monday through Friday. And, of course, we do kind of the urgent calls over on Marfoogle News. If there's something that is breaking that, again, we want to get out to all of you, that would be the channel that we do it. Very rarely, sometimes we'll do those kind of short updates on this channel as well. So make sure to also go show love for our awesome mods. Make sure to go pop over to marfugglenews.com/friends. You have everyone from Bones to Wages and people in between like Trinity, Red or Blue Pill, Hi-Ho, Kermit the Frog here, Ilea, RGL Harris, Ripcore Readiness, Lisa R. Hall, Jammer, Optical Gem, CJ Blaze, and of course Chance, who is holding it down over on DLive, and of course is an author over on Amazon. So go check out. They have all of their links right there. On top of people like I mentioned earlier, like Alaska Prepper. Of course, you've got your Jacob Israels over there. You've got all sorts of great people. So make sure to utilize it. That is, again, marfugglenews.com/friends. All right, let's hear it for our mods. Let's drop an M in the chat. And thank you so much, Dex. I appreciate you so much.
Much love. Great job, brother.
And again, thank you for making it to tonight's show. It is now time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout out. It's a shoutro.